Hey guys, Greg here, Vinyl Rundown on a Friday night. Let's talk about a guy named Gary Burton. Do you know who Gary Burton is? One of the most influential jazz guys of the, say from the 70s and 80s maybe, that not a lot of people have heard of because he just isn't that well known outside of sort of the hardcore jazz fans. I've got 8 or 10 Gary Burton records. He's a vibraphone player, by the way. Vibes, not a well-known instrument compared to, not as fun and hip as the sax and the guitar. Anyway, Gary Burton was just the subject of a really great interview that just came out in the last 2 days on Rick Beato's channel. So this little video is sort of a review and a reminder. Go watch Rick Beato interview Gary Burton. I'll go through some of my records on Gary Burton and explain why I think he's such an awesome guy. So Rick Beato, his channel is Everything Music, and I've been following him probably when he was starting at 400,000 subscribers on YouTube, and now he's up to 800,000. Really one of the most important music people on YouTube. He's not so much a vinyl record collector as a guy who just knows everything about music and works in music and creates records and produces and composes and teaches and music theory and music history, and he could be talking about jazz one day and Alice in Chains the next day. And Gary Burton, who's like a grand master of American jazz, sat down for a long-form interview with Rick Beato, just published a couple days ago, 45-50 minutes long. Gary Burton is just kind of probably doesn't receive the attention he should because he's kind of a soft-spoken, behind-the-scenes kind of a guy, but instrumental in the creation of ECM Records and the careers of people like Metheny, and obviously a master of the vibes, but also he was I don't know if he was the president of or the head of Berklee School of Music in Boston for like 30 years. So really very instrumental. That's a double meaning word here. Instrumental, influential in creating jazz teaching, jazz pedagogy. There's a crazy word. So anyway, please go watch that interview with Gary Burton on the Rick Beato channel. Please subscribe to Rick Beato, and you might subscribe to me while you're at it if you've got nothing better to do. I'm going to go through some of these records that I have with from Gary Burton to try to go through his timeline and see what his shtick is. So this is a weird one that not too many people know about. It's a country record, Nashville. What's it called? Tennessee Firebird. Recorded in Nashville. Gary Burton, the jazz world encounters country music together with great country instrumentalists on RCA. This is from the 60s, 67. Who's on here? Buddy Emmons from the country world, and then Steve Swallow and Roy Haynes. Let's see, what tunes do they do? Black is the color of my true love's hair. That's a great old English traditional song. I don't know a lot of these songs. I just got this at a thrift store for $1.99. That's a little bit thrash, but for $1.99, it's good to have. So Gary started really young. He's one of these prodigies that started like at 18 or 19 years old. I think he was playing with George Shearing's Quartet, and he commented that everybody in the band was in their 40s and he was in his teens, and he realized in 20 years all of his fans would be kind of too old to know what's going on, so he better find some new fans, and kind of he helped modernize kind of where jazz was going back then. I mean, John Coltrane and those people were going very outside, but for just sort of the more traditional listener, he commented that all the jazz musicians playing in clubs in America were just kind of playing the same old 100 standard songs over and over and over, and those songs were all from the Broadway Gershwin days. And he really wanted music to sort of move into a new harmonic direction. So One of those earliest records is this one, Chick Corea with Gary Burton. Just a duet, just the two of them. And in the interview, Gary talks about how Manfred Eicher, the head of ECM, really bugged them to make this record. They played one little duet together at a jam, and he thought, okay, you guys got to keep doing that. I'm going to record this. And they're like, who wants to hear a piano and a vibes? Well, reminder, that was done in the Modern Jazz Quartet years before. Anyway, he finally talked him into doing it, and there's a bunch of Chick Corea songs and Steve Swallow songs on here. Any Gary Burton songs? No. But the tonality of piano and vibes together with no other instrumentation, it's very mellow, introspective, different. But that was the new direction that ultimately helped sort of found the sound of ECM. ECM Records, maybe you know, is this very popular now jazz label. Is jazz popular? By jazz standards, it's popular. But the sound of ECM Records, you know, very introspective, quieter, mellower, not so blues influenced. The early days of ECM was, Gary Burton was a big part of that. Anyway, let me go through some of these other records here. Okay, here's another one, duet, another duet with Chick Corea and Gary Burton. 1978, children's song, tunes I don't know, but they're all written by Chick Corea or Steve Swallow. Steve Swallow's the bass player, long associated with ECM Records also. Okay, go through these real quick for you. Recognize this one? It's there and it's here. I got 2 copies of this one. Passengers, Gary Burton with Eberhard Weber. Eberhard Weber, great bass player from Germany. It's spelled Weber, but it's pronounced Weber, like Wagner. Who's on here? Danny Gottlieb, who went to play with Pat Metheny later. Pat Metheny. So Pat Metheny was actually very closely associated with Gary Burton. Gary Burton used a lot of guitar players in his bands and really was trying to incorporate a sort of rock sound into jazz. And he started with Larry Coryell, and then Mick Goodrick, and then Pat Metheny. So Pat Metheny started playing with the Gary Burton band. Probably Pat was like 18 years old or something. And this is one of the important records, I would say, as a collaboration between Gary Burton and Pat Metheny. Pat Metheny wrote half the songs on here. A Chick Corea tune, a Steve Swallow song, Claude and Betty. What does that refer to? I don't know. Not Clyde, not Bonnie and Clyde. I don't know. So this has one of an amazing tune on it called Midwestern Night's Dream. One of my favorite old Pat Metheny tunes. That tune will show up later in this shtick. Oh, this had the great picture of Gary on the back. So in the interview, Rick Beato asks Gary, what do you want to be remembered for? And I went over some of those things just now, but the other one is this 2 mallets in each hand playing the vibes. It's called the 4 mallet technique. He didn't exactly invent it, but he really popularized it and brought it to a new level. So we've got the 2 hands, each hand with 2 mallets, so you're playing 4 notes at once. Really fast, great improvisation, great tune, great cover. ECM is known for their great photography, and this one is no exception. Great cover. Just a simple sign on the side of the road, but it looks beautiful. Do we say who made the photo? Roberto Mazzotti. Hey Mazzy, who's Roberto Mazzotti? I don't know. Okay, so this is one of the important records with Gary Burton and Pat Metheny and bass player Eberhard Weber. And don't move. Oh, here's another. Oh my God, there's so many good records here. I only have a fraction of his records. He's got a bazillion records. There's another one, Eberhard Weber, The Ring. Interesting graphic cover. And 1974, Mick Goodrick on guitar and Pat Metheny on guitar. And Bob Moses on drums. He'll come up later in this discussion. And what tunes are on here? Tunnel of Love by Mike Gibbs. I don't know that tune. Let's see. Silent Spring by Carla Bley. Carla Bley comes up a lot in early ECM stuff, and she collaborated a lot with Gary Burton also. Carla Bley got the weird frizzy hair, and she writes a lot of piano and big band music. Was married to Paul Bley for a while. Paul Bley died, I think, a year or two ago. Okay, The Ring, another good one. And here is another excellent one. Where are we here? Dreams So Real, Gary Burton Quintet, and music of Carla Bley. I just mentioned Carla Bley. Interesting pictures back here. See how they're building it out? Nobody. And then Gary. And then Gary and Pat Metheny. And then Gary and Pat and Steve Swallow. And then some other dudes. Hey, it was the 70s. What do you want from me? What tunes are on here? What players are on here? Gary Burton, Mick Goodrick, Pat Metheny, Steve Swallow, Bob Moses. That's like the classic Gary Burton Quintet. What tunes? Dream So Real. Ictus Syndrome. I don't know these tunes by name. Where's side 2? Vox Humana. I don't know these tunes by name, but this is a good, mellow, trippy record. Music of Carla Bley. Okay, now we're coming to something that will either blow your mind or freak you out or cause panic. One of the most important Gary Burton records. I just learned this watching the Gary Burton interview. What? What are you talking about? What record is that? Pat Metheny, Bright Size Life, one of his most important seminal records. Gary Burton's name does not appear anywhere on here. Look at Pat, how young he was, wearing the sweater and the frizzy hair. 1976. Oh, wait, Gary Burton's name does appear on here. He wrote the sort of liner notes here and talks about how he met Pat and how they worked together. So the interview that we've been referring to with Rick Beato, Gary talks about how he should have been given a producer credit on this record, and he and Pat worked out all the tunes before they ever went into the studio. So this has really the feel of a Gary Burton record in many ways. Bob Moses on drums, a bass player new to the scene named Jaco Pastorius. This is probably Jaco's best record in terms of quiet, introspective ballads, intimate type record. It's not funky and fast notes and show-offy stuff, but it's really musicianship and collaboration. So if you don't have any Jaco records and you don't have any Pat Metheny records, this is one you must have. Pat is still playing some of these tunes 40 years later. Bright Size Life, he still plays at a lot of his concerts. It's got the tune that I mentioned before, Missouri Night's Dream. I'm sorry, I screwed that up. Midwestern Night's Dream, Missouri Uncompromised. And yesterday I did a video. Don't move. Talking about Missouri, Pat Metheny. Beyond the Missouri Sky with Pat Metheny and Charlie Hayden. These two records are kind of a two bookends. Metheny with Charlie Hayden, Metheny with Jaco Pastorius, with the Missouri aesthetic, rural country, quiet countryside, all that stuff. At one point I thought making a video of those two records just by themselves would be a good thing to do. Bookends, if you will, of Pat Metheny's career, beginning and more recent. Anyway, I'm supposed to be talking about Gary Burton. Omaha Celebration, So you got Missouri, Midwest, and Omaha all in one record, if that gives you an idea of the feel of this thing. And of course Jaco was from Florida, I guess. So as much as Gary was talking about not being given credit on this record, I didn't realize he wrote the liner notes. I guess I forgot about that. But you must get this. You must listen to it. Leave a note in the comments that you've done your homework and listened to this record thoroughly, because that's required listening. It's required ownership in the vinyl community. It's enough preaching for one day. What else? We got some more recent Gary Burton. I'm not sure if I have these in the right order. Okay. Gary has a bazillion records, and he's got a lot of stuff that I don't have. I have the ECM period pretty heavily. I don't have the RCA period. I don't have the Keith Jarrett stuff. But here's what I got. 1982, Picture This, the Gary Burton Quartet with Steve Swallow. More Chick Corea tunes, Carla Bley tunes. Ooh, there's a Mingus tune on here called Sound of Love. And I don't know much about that record, but there you go. Look how similar these covers are, guys. Is there a geometric thing going on here? You got the shutters opening, pointing forward, and you got the street signs pointing forward. I just noticed that. What does that mean? Can anybody explain? I do not know. Okay, and here's a later one from the 80s called Gary Burton Quartet Real Life Hits. That sounds like the name of another Carla Bley song, doesn't it? Gary Burton, Makoto Ozone, the Japanese piano player, Steve Swallow again, Mike Nyman on drums, who I don't know that well. Did you know the Beatles are on here? Right? If you're a Beatle fan, you're going to want to get this, because the Beatles are definitely on here. Track number 2 is called The Beatles, and it was written by John Scofield, one of my favorite guitar players. And that song appears on one of his early records on the Enja label. Someday I'll have to do a deal like this on John Scofield. I bet Rick Beato's going to interview him soon too, because that's right up his alley. What tunes are on here? Carla Bley, Syndrome, a Duke Ellington tune, Fleurette Africaine, a Steve Swallow tune, Duke Ellington and John Scofield and the Beatles all mushed together. That's how eclectic and awesome Gary Burton is. Is that it? Did I give you all the Gary Burton albums and the Pat Metheny album? I think that's it, guys. So, reminder, I want you to go back and watch this interview. It's not really a documentary. Interview with Rick Beato and Gary Burton. And tell me what you think. And also, please consider looking at Rick Beato's channel more carefully. I think that's all I've got to say today about the vibes and Gary Burton. Gary Burton is sort of retired now. His health is not so great. He's been retired from Berklee School of Music. Did I mention that before? I probably did. Berklee School of Music, ECM, other record labels. But sort of late in his career and retiring. So check it out, guys. Consider subscribing. And thank you for watching. Keep that vinyl spinning.